please, there's always one question you've not asked. Please go ahead. Just one answer, and then let's just get to know the person next to you. Ask them who they are, what do they do. If you can exchange contacts. This table is very silent. Go ahead, please. Get to know each other. Wonderful. I want to see high fives. I want to see handshakes. I want to see business cards being exchanged, phone numbers being taken. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. All right, so let me have your attention once again. Much as I know there are those who are enjoying the moment, there are those who are saying, can we end this now? But I know with time you get able to know the person seated next to you and the rest in the room, even in a better way, because the aim for us is to connect as well. Beyond what is bringing us in this room, we also need to connect with each other. Now I know the students who used to end up in the nurse makers. All right, let me have your attention, please. All right. So we're here today to actually have a very, very important session. A session that affects a very important demographic of our populations. And it's actually the youth. And I think I was looking at some of the definitions, even when it comes to employment and all that. And I was asking myself, where do I fall? I will not say, but I think I know now. And thank you for the glossary page of this particular concept note. So if it's the first time, maybe you're hearing this voice for the first time, I believe you've introduced each other. And I think I'd like also to introduce myself. My name is Eugene, and I'm a broadcast journalist. I've been in communication space for the last 16, 17 years. I'm the immediate former country manager for CNBC Africa here in Rwanda. And now I founded a communication company called East Africa Media Group. And we run a lot of mentorship programs for young people. So young people or the youth are
data from our baselines. From the research we have commissioned, we finished 7 baselines across massive, large surveys. We're looking at actually longitudinal data from other areas, and we're looking at being connected, and then the national demographic sample surveys across about 6 or 7 countries. So we are building some muscle around data, and this African Youth Employment Clock is beginning to demonstrate, like others, that data is for use. Data is not to be kept somewhere. Data is a transformative tool in intervention, in negotiation, in engagement, in conversations, in program design, in program cost correction, and various other things, if we are going to tackle and attain the mission of our foundation. And I'll come to that, the mission and the vision of our foundation. So permit me to talk a little bit, party political broadcast time. I'm going to talk about the MasterCard Foundation. We are a Canadian organization started in 2006 by the MasterCard company, but set up as a gift to the world. And we are truly a gift as a set up an independent organization. Our mission for our first decade centered on education and financial inclusion in Africa. And now through our Young Africa Work strategy, 30,000 young people will find dignified and fulfilling employment, with women representing a significant portion of this achievement. This success is amplified by our partnership with over 60% being local entities that ensure sustainability and community-driven progress. We also see a little bit of friction between partners, but we are successfully been able to engage with World Data Lab in a way that friction is almost non-existent. I think it's because of the coming together of vision, of energy, of pace, because pace is important in the world we live in today. So today's event is a culmination of an enormous collective effort which began in 2022. Together with World Data Lab, we set out to transform how labor market data is presented and used, making it more accessible to policymakers, program designers, and young people themselves as they navigate their career pathways. The Africa Youth Employment Clock by the World Data Lab aligns with our mission to enable 30 million young Africans to access dignified and fulfilling work by 2030. As we witness and leaders capital for solving local and global problems, this tool will play a key role. The partnership with World Data Lab marks a pivotal step forward. We're looking forward, I think it's almost like home base for World Data Lab, Rwanda, Kenya. We're looking forward to continue with you, Ghana, Senegal, Nigeria, and all Uganda, and all these other places. So thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you very much, friends. Thank you very much, our distinguished guests who are here, and the government of Rwanda, representatives of the government of Rwanda. We look forward to a really engaging and you said interactive, engaging and interactive way. And I hope it is also transformative for all of us. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much. Let's appreciate Dr. Tare one more time. Thank you for reminding us of the importance of meaningful collaborations, and we're witnessing that today, and we hope that we can borrow and live from that level of collaboration that has happened within stakeholders and partners. And they always say that failing to plan is planning to fail. And thank you for reminding us on the importance of building on data, or building on data-driven decision making in that space. We're going to be able to hear about Rwanda and, of course, a global picture on the state of affairs here. I won't preempt the speakers or the next speakers' talking points in this particular space, but he's the man with the numbers, of course, as far as his role or the institution he works for is concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for our keynote speech person who's going to deliver that is none other than the Deputy Director General of the National Institute of Statistics here in Rwanda, Ivan Murenzi. Let's appreciate him, ladies and gentlemen. And we're waiting for Dr. Kade until he gets here. One more.
I had to rush. Good morning. I did realize that it's been a while since I've been invited to quite an innovative and an exciting event. It feels like one already. But it's my pleasure to be here this morning, and I want to start by recognizing our hosts, our guests, specifically the Chief Impact and Research Officer, Mastercard. We just met this morning, and I'm looking forward to further connection. The CEO of World Data Lab, we just greeted, but I look forward to further discussion. The CEO of Mastercard Foundation, who apparently has been in touch with us at NISR, but we hadn't connected, so I look forward to connect as well. Representatives from government institutions, colleagues I recognize here, from the private sector federation or private sector in general, from development partners. I do recognize some faces again I'm familiar with. Civil society, youth leaders. Give them a hand clap for the youth leaders. Very important that we have you in the room. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, once again, good morning. Thanks to the World Data Lab and Mastercard Foundation for bringing us together. Indeed, we gather here to launch the Africa Youth Employment Block. We'll hear more about it. But you know, we can pick two words there, two keywords. Youth and employment. So we can start by saying why? Why youth? Why employment? Because youth matter. And employment is very important to everyone's life and well-being. But if I just talked at those statements, you know, we would wonder why that is so. So unless I give some facts to that, unless I add some numbers, then we can appreciate why. And I usually obviously have several numbers, but I just thought of just speaking a few of them, and I'll speak more to Rwanda. So this could be a quiz, but I will save you the time. I don't want to bother you, but I will say, what percentage of youth, what percentage are youth in Rwanda? I don't know how many of you can give me that number. And when we say youth in Rwanda, we mean 16 to 30 years. That's our definition. I know the range used by the World Data Lab is one which kind of compares other countries, but very close by though. So in Rwanda, it's about 27% of our population are youth, so over a quarter, just between 16 to 30 years. That's the biggest segment. If you look at other segments, that's the biggest segment. And that's so for Africa, I'm sure. But when you say young people in Rwanda, young meaning 30 years and below, that's even a bigger percentage. Anyone wants to take a guess? But that's 65%. So 65% of the population is 30 years and below in Rwanda. So you could say 16 to 30 youth, but the potential of others just behind them is even much bigger. And when we say employment, employment is one of the biggest challenges that we have in Rwanda, but also in other countries in Africa, I'm sure. When it comes to youth employment in Rwanda, in the last, let's say 4 years, especially after COVID, the unemployment rate has gone higher. Before then, it was fluctuating between 15 to 18% youth unemployment. But in the last 4 years, it's been ranging between 20 to 26%. 20 to 26% unemployment rate for youth. So that's why we're talking about youth. That's why we're talking about employment, because these initial figures depict the challenge at hand. These initial figures depict the work that has to be done. And for sure, statistics and data is our way to understand challenges, is our way to understand the work that has to be done. And that excites us at NISR. As the National Institute of Statistics for Rwanda, for those who may not be familiar, we're the main government institution that collects, produces, and disseminates official statistics in the country. And these statistics are quite wide, they cover all sectors of the country. Specifically when it comes to employment, we have quite a number of them, but mainly the labor force survey, which is done on a quarterly basis. And then we have an annual report. This has been one of our major outputs for the last, let's say, 8 years. And it's been a major source of information when we talk of employment, when we talk of policies around employment, when we talk of youth interventions. But we have several other sources of information, obviously. So statistics is our major responsibility, and it's always exciting to see how other partners partner with us, actually. And this is what I want to appreciate with the World Data Lab and MasterCard Foundation. I think you've been key partners in this journey, because what we do is produce high-level information, mostly tables, reports, sometimes very challenging to engage by the usual user. I acknowledge that, very challenging to engage or use by the non-statisticians. People are not so familiar with data. So we do welcome initiatives of others who undertake projects which make this information even much accessible, much simpler. And I want to commend you for that. A hand clap to our partners. So, what we have today, the clock, the youth employment clock, the Africa Youth Employment Clock, is one of those initiatives, one of those meaningful initiatives that comes in place to, focus on the youth, who we have acknowledged a key segment of the population, but more so also focus on employment matters, and therefore highlight the underlying issues around that. I had a brief time to look at the clock already. I didn't come here without checking it. So, and it was exciting to see some of the things there and the simplicity of the tool. So I commend you again for that. I must say that it's easier to access. It is friendly. It's not complex like our reports, so you should be able to navigate that. But it makes an attempt to model and forecast information ahead, which is important because we don't do that as the statistics office. We don't model, we don't forecast data. But with the right tools, with the right combination of information and the right expertise, you can try to forecast things ahead, which is very needed also. So that's again a very welcome idea, and it presents an opportunity for us to engage that. So I encourage all of us to engage this information. I'm sure it's going to be launched. This is work in progress. I must underline that. This is work in progress. There are a few things to align with maybe national data that exists. Much of it has already been done, but probably it's work in progress also in the sense of what next. So this is the initial information, but what next, and actually come from us here today. So once again, we welcome the initiative as the Statistics Office. We think it complements very well our work and our efforts to make data more available, make data more easy to be consumed by the intended users, and ultimately influence the relevant decisions and the next policies. So thank you once again, and we look forward to a productive meeting.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. We can appreciate Ivan one more time. Thank you very much for that very important keynote address. And also thank you for reminding some of us in the room. You mentioned 16 to 30 years. And we've been calling ourselves youth. My friend Nicholas and myself, I think we now know where we fall. But we refuse to not be youth. We'll forever be youth at heart. All right, so thank you very much for that, and also for reminding us of the significance of making data easily available, especially through tools like the Africa Youth Employment Clock that is being unveiled today. Thank you for also challenging us to think on the next steps after this. What next? I think these are very important takeaways that I was speaking while you were making that keynote address. Now, we all came here to understand what this clock really means or how it looks like. Personally, I wish this had come 17 years ago so that I would have been able to know whether I was in the right space for me to land on in the right job or the right space today. But nonetheless, it's better that it is coming at this time, especially with the features that it has that can model and be able to project the trends in future. So I want us to be able to pay attention as we listen to the presentation of the Africa Youth Employment Clock, all the details that we need to know about it. Remember, you can note down some of the questions you'd like to know and the comments that you'd like to give, and we'll open the floor for that during the question and answer session. Allow me to bring the Chief Executive Officer of World Data Lab, Dr. Wolfgang Fengler, and of course Samuel Zaramba, the Senior Data Scientist, to give us that presentation of how this Africa Youth Employment Talk looks like. Let's give them a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Eugene. As you can see from the picture, I tried to be younger than I am. But it was taken when I was living in East Africa. I lived in Kenya, but also covered Rwanda. Thank you so much, Ivan, for your wonderful introduction and overview. I'm not sure for those in the room who know, but Rwanda Statistics is a world leader. Yusuf, I think, is not here because he's with Paris 21. Paris 21 is the Global Association of Statistical Agencies in the world. Who is chairing it? It's you. Rwanda is chairing that group that's led by the OECD. So I get a reflection of the strength here. And this is a happening place. I think I have met some people I haven't met in a while, and some of you have met. I think you recognize this in the room, and I want to recognize two people who have been part of the beginning of the work that are there. Ahmad Ali and Norman Treppel, actually, Norman helped to launch the poverty clock that we had, and the jobs clock in Tunisia. So welcome, and many other international partners. But let me also say a special thank you to Tade, David, Eunice, and your wonderful teams. You're a very humble organization, although you're a big one, and I think the way you outlined things was very inspiring. So thank you for the partnership. What I'll do now is I'll share one or two words about what and who we are, and then I want to give you the Africa Jobs Challenge and context and opportunity, and my colleague Samuel Kuraba will actually present you the Rwanda insights. So we'll do three things. Yeah. First, we not just built the Africa Youth Employment Clock, we built the Africa Youth Employment Clock with African youth, and as part of the vision of MasterCard Foundation, of our own vision, is we train young data scientists, and you see actually here Sajid in Kenya, Samuel, who's speaking up from the side, Clement, Meden, and Kwadjo. So please raise your hand. You're the young Africa data scientists here in the group. So also later, when you want to think about the past, about the model, about the data. The team is very international. We have team members from Rwanda, from Uganda, from Kenya, from South Africa, from Ethiopia, and from Ghana already, together with 20 other nationalities in the world. And you see some of the other folks here, actually Reshma and Melissa, overseeing our Africa portfolio and global. But also we wanted to connect that very strong young team with some of them a bit older, like myself, or Homi, my co-founder, who's was an architect of the SDG and somebody close to the G20 process, so that this team can work with global experts and we learn from them and vice versa. And that's our offer to other partners, to say we help to integrate young talent into a global team that can work on global client projects. So what is the Africa Youth Employment Clock in words, and in more simple numbers, and you'll hear a few more numbers from me and others. We have all countries. Actually quite interesting, those of us who have their heart and work in Africa, we always talk about sub-Saharan Africa. The Africa Youth Employment Talk is about all Africa, all countries, and you see actually quite a lot of insights. You'll see that actually North Africa has some similarities to Southern Africa, but East and West Africa have other opportunities and challenges. We project, as Yusuf just said, that's part of our strength. We want to project forward, and as Ivan outlined, and it's actually very important, as you outlined, Ivan. This is a dynamic process. It's never finished. Even all those of you who have an iPhone here, it's never finished. There will be a next iPhone. So you always have to have the spirit to keep improving, but you need to have a base, and that's what we created. But we have a strong forecasting team, and I think it's helpful to know which direction you're going and what the scenario could be. And we have a lot of variables, so it's not just about jobs in total and about the number of people. We have also, can tell you how much money they're earning, can tell you which jobs are growing, and some will give you lots of insight. So it's not just about jobs itself, but it's about the types of jobs people can have and can expect to have in a country like Rwanda. So let me just give you a few big messages and insights on Africa, because I know there's many of you cover the region and cover the globe, and at least have the heart in Africa. So let me just highlight the key numbers for population growth. He's the expert, so I shouldn't do the exercise, but I want to put in context. Till 18 million 10 years from now, 4 more million Rwandans, so 18 million. It's actually quite a large country. It will be larger than Holland. Rwanda in 10 years will be a country larger than Holland. So it is a very different context. It's a mid-sized, large country. Obviously a certain type of characteristics and a strong density, which will be an opportunity. But these are some of the key shifts I think we should be aware of. Rwanda, think of Rwanda like a Holland. It's the same, will be soon the same size as Zimbabwe. Good with this, let me add one more key insight before I hand over to Samuel, which is among the young people, who is working and who is not working. I'm explicitly saying working and not having a job, because many Africans can't afford not to work. They don't work, they die. So you have to do something, and that's the key challenge. That's why I think it's so important as MasterCard Foundation outlined. It's not just that you do some work, and sometimes you have very difficult situations or don't earn much, and that you have dignified and fulfilling work. But it's interesting if you look at the numbers, and again I'll walk you through in a minute, roughly speaking in the world, of this cohort, every second is working or has a job, every second. And that's the right number. A country should not try to be higher, because if you're higher, that means young girls and boys work on a farm maybe and are not studying. And kids age 16, 17, they should most likely in the future be in school. So 50% is the right number. Look at Europe, it's actually less than 50%. South America a bit above, Asia 49%. So you can't go much higher than 50% if you use the broader definition. You start age 18, you could go a bit higher. And then there's young mothers and many other reasons why young people can't work. So what is the stunning number here is the number for you, for this region, 65%. Too many East Africans are actually working. Too many are working. It's too high a number. Because some of them should actually be in school. A bit provoking, because they could be even worse, but it's actually, some of them work but don't have a great job. And now that is another level. But I wanted to put this in context. Also look at Southern and Northern Africa. Very different numbers. It's the opposite challenge. There's too few people working. Too many unemployed. That's not the South African challenge. But I think this sets just a stark orientation. 50% is the roughly right number for this cohort. 25% are studying, and 25% are still trying. That number should go down further, but no country has gotten this number to 0. Kenya is actually quite good. Kenya is 50%, and we can go to 10%, so-called NETS, non-employment education or training. But I want to give you that because it is an interesting contrast. It could reshape some narrative. So this number cannot go higher than 65% for Eastern Africa. I think Rwanda is interestingly currently at 50%. There's a different challenge that Samuel will tell you in a second. So with this, let me hand over to Samuel. He's actually overseeing the data team here, and he will walk us through the Rwanda numbers. Over to Samuel.
Thank you very much, Wolfgang. Hello, everyone. Unlike the previous speakers, I actually qualify as a youth. Yeah, I would like to share with you some of the insights we've been working on for Rwanda, and I'm really excited. Building on the insights that Wolfgang just presented, I'd like now to shift gears and look at what the future might look like for the youth in Rwanda. And this will help us set the stage for other insights that I'll share. If you look at the top line there, it shows us the youth population. And what we see there is it's going to grow by almost 800,000 youth by 2030. But what you see there is that as a share of the total population, this is not really changing. Right? So it's staying at around 36%. Now, where are these youth with respect to labor market indicators? If you look at the green line, that points to the employed youth. And now we see that by 2030, that will grow by around 100,000. However, as a share of the population, this will drop a little bit. This is not business as usual scenario. So this is a scenario where the current, and what we see is that most of the youth that will drop out of employment will move more into the needs group, where we see it's going to grow by almost 2 percentage points from around 1.8 million to 2.2 million. And we also see a bit of growth in the share of students. But this really points to the fact that the youth population is growing, as you see above there, faster than the labor market will absorb them into employment. Now, we'll try to unpack this as we move along. Thinking about the nature of work for the youth in Rwanda and what that looks like. Out of the 2.2 million, we see that most of the employment in Rwanda is mainly informal, at around 89%. Now, keep an eye on the gender split. As you can see, with regards to employment, we almost have a very close number for male and female, around 54 and 55 for female. However, what you see there is that within the formal employment, it's male and the informal employment is very close. But when we look at the sectors where the youth work currently, we see that it's mostly agriculture. And if you look at the gender split there as well, it's very important. You see that there are more females in agriculture than male. And the other two sectors, services and industry, are more male dominated. And lastly, a concept here on working poverty, we see that close to 75% youth at work regarded as moderately poor or extremely poor. This is based on the global poverty line. So this is not the national poverty line. We now shift gears and look at the sectors and compare Rwanda to the rest of Africa and the world. And what we can see is Rwanda points to something very key and something very important, which is a structural transformation where agriculture releases jobs to services and industry sectors, which are more high productive sectors. And this is a pattern that is similar to what we've seen in the East Asian countries, where the jobs from agriculture become less and less and move more into the services and industry sector. And this is points to strong economic growth. This is a good thing. Now, where are these jobs within the sectors? In our business as usual scenario, what we see is that most of these jobs are going to come from construction and manufacturing in the industry sector, as well as transport and communication. And these jobs include jobs in the digital economy, jobs in software development, programming, and we know that in Rwanda there's a big push on that. So this is points to a very good picture. And we see the agriculture jobs dropping and the youth moving away from agriculture and forestry jobs, which are low-paying jobs generally, moving into construction and manufacturing jobs, which are high-skilled jobs. And with regards to educational sectors, what we see here is a picture that's not very different to the rest of Africa, where the less educated youth tend to work in agriculture, and the more educated youth work in services. As you move away from lower levels of education, higher levels of education, you see that the shares of youth with tertiary education who work within services are close to 77% here. And what you want is to move the youth closer to higher levels of education, because that moves them or prepares them for jobs that are going to be more available in the services and industry sector, as we have seen. Now, putting all this together, looking at the gender breakdown across these sectors, what we see is agriculture is generally female-dominated, and the other two sectors, industry and services, more male-dominated. And comparing the picture for Rwanda with Africa, what we see is, in Africa on average, 53% of female youth work in agriculture. This is not a different picture compared to the male, which is 49, to what we see in Rwanda as well. Now, this presents a challenge, as we have seen that most of the jobs are going to be more in the services and industry sectors, which means that young females will have to move closer into industry and services, which are sectors that are already male-dominated, as we have seen. So this presents a particular challenge. Yeah, and looking at the subnational level, as we have this data as well on our jobs blog, which I'll show you in a minute. And what we see here is, if you look at the Kigali, which is in the center there, most of the jobs in agriculture are more in the, as you can see, the green, more in the eastern province, more in the southern province, less jobs in agriculture around Kigali. But what we see when you move over to services and industries, most of those jobs are more around centered in Kigali. and that points to an urban shift, as we see that most jobs will be more into construction, manufacturing, and services generally, and industry, which are more, as you can see here, more concentrated in the central region, which is where Kigali is. That points to youth moving into these areas to be able to take in these jobs. And you see across the industry, it's a bit more spread out across the country, but for services particularly, you see jobs are mostly concentrated around Kigali. This is not surprising. We all live in Kigali. This is something that we've already observed. Yeah, with that, maybe I'll wrap up, but just going through some of the key points that we see here. Most of the jobs we see are going to be coming from services and industry from our business as usual case that we projected, and these are already male dominated. We also see a structural transformation where agriculture will release jobs, and these jobs move more into services and industry. But these are sectors that are already male dominated, and that poses a challenge to particularly the female youth who potentially have to move into such jobs. And lastly, if the current trends continue and no major interventions, we see that the share of youth needs, the youth that are not in education employment, would continue to grow. Yeah, with those points, maybe I'd like to take you through a quick demo of our youth employment book and show you how some of these insights that I just presented, you can easily get them on the website. Thank you. I just switch over my laptop to this. 1 second. Great. All right, let's get to this. Okay. Great. As we highlighted earlier, some of the key features of our data work and employment clock is that the projection, the ability to see what the future might look like. And when you look at when you go over to Africa Youth Jobs Bio, you'll be able to access our clock, and I'll highlight some of the key sections of the clock. Right at the top here, you see where Africa, for example, and we have a list of all the countries, 54 African countries and states. And you see on the landing page right here, you see the key labor market indicators highlighted here for Africa. And we have small explanations here to clarify some of the definitions. And what we see, for example, here, using Africa as an example, we see that there are 500 million youth currently in 2023. And around 52%, which was presented earlier, of them are employed. Using this bar at the bottom, you can be able to scroll through the different projections and see how this population will grow. And what we presented earlier, the population is projected to grow by around 100 million by 2030, and you can see this right on the clock. The clock has 6 major sections, and I'll quickly walk you through them. On the landing page, you see this, but above here, we show you employment dynamics, gender dynamics. We show you a bit of the trends of our projection work. We show you dynamics with employment and education, disaggregated by educational attainments. And we can also do country comparisons. And we have a few sections here where you can provide feedback, but also you could look at methodology and learn more about how we put this data together. Now, maybe just quickly use Rwanda here as an example. Look at 2023. You can see here, this is what we just presented, about 5 million, growing to about 5.9 million by 2030. Another country we could look at briefly here, perhaps Burundi, and we also see similar insights here. And for the two countries, Rwanda and Kenya, we have insights also at the subnational level. And here you see a map that shows you where this data is available. So currently we have it for Rwanda and Kenya, but Uganda, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Ghana, and Senegal will be coming soon as well. So here maybe I can use Rwanda as well. And you have an option here to select one of the districts. Maybe you select Savo here, Kigali. And you'll be able to see the same insights that you see at the national level, also at the subnational level. So you see our estimate for the employed youth, unemployed, and inactive. And you can scroll through. You can zoom in a bit on the employment to see what type of sectors and what percentage of that is where the youth are working in these sectors. We have filters here for age as well, and you can also filter by gender. You can also select directly from the map, right? If you wanted to say, select directly here, like I can quickly just select on the map and I'm able to see this as well. So we provide ability here to do further breakdowns, employed population by gender, and seeing how that is set up within the different sectors here. And you can even go in to see the subsectors. So we have 3 main sectors, but we have 14 subsectors. For example, within services, if you open this, you're able to see all these other subsectors and how they're distributed across gender, for example, in accommodation and services, financial and insurance service activities. So you're able to see this, and you can scroll through here to see all the other services within this. So wholesale and retail, transport and storage, and communication. So we break down these insights even further from the 3 main sectors. Another section here is the trends. So this is where you are able to see how things have been growing and evolving. One of the things that we see here, for example, if I look at Burundi, I can see the share of employed and how it's projected to grow up to 2030. I can show Burundi as well. And we can see this and how it's going. And we can disaggregate this by, for example, education attainment, and you can see how that dynamics is going to evolve up to 2030. And you can also see, for example, here where some of the insights that I just presented and where the youth are working with what level of education, and you can see here as well. You can also do a country comparison. So, for example, so Burundi here, and I can quickly compare 2 countries and see, okay, population more or less the same, or close, or the share of employed, the work in poverty, formal jobs, students, formality, urban rural areas where employment is happening. And those are the main sections of our clock. You can also look over to the methodology and learn a bit more how this work was put together. Those are the main sections of the clock. Thank you very much.
Right, that was deep and very insightful. I'm opening the floor for just 3 interventions before we get into the panel discussion. If you have any question, any comment you want to make, even just to appreciate the hard work put behind that, feel free to just say, I just have no question. I'm just going to say thank you. I have a hand here and I'm going to start with the ladies. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you all that have. My comment is, wow. Thank you very much. I'm going to commence the senior with the foundation, so I'm already acquainted to some of this, but a question popped up in my mind as they were presenting. Like, what do we qualify as agriculture or services? For example, if I operate a coal truck to take French beans from rural area to the Nairobi warehouse, I'm in agriculture or am I in services? Just out of curiosity, but in terms of the work presented, thank you very much. This is very useful.
Sam or Wolfie, you want to take it?
Sure, thank you. Excellent question. Thank you for the feedback. Please send out all the more details if you want to go through the deep classification coding, but it's an important point you made. The short answer is if you have a truck that does deliver food, you're in the trucking business, huh? So that's going to be simple, that would be transport. And it's actually an important point because agriculture, in most countries, all countries, still has a future, but it's a very different agriculture, right? It's an industry that has a lot of service jobs. That's why no country has become rich with high employment in agriculture. What we saw in Rwanda, and what's the challenge? A lot of people believe agriculture is normal. You may still have big food industries, but they are then industries. That's actually an industry, and you have truckers with them, you have accountants, you have, think of the big, some of you know Bitco. This is actually not an agriculture employer, it's an industrial company that has an agricultural extension. So I think it's important in terms of the narrative, as you said. So it's very, but this is the challenge that we highlighted, that Sam highlighted, especially the gender challenge. It is normal, and it's normally a good thing that people leave the agriculture sector because others are highly productive in traditional agriculture. But it's a challenge because the new jobs are in construction and manufacturing, which is normally what we do. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, good morning. First of all, really warm congratulations on this well-developed dashboard. I think it's really great. My name is Mingwan. I'm the Deputy Representative of UNICEF Rwanda Country Office. I also say, from a person, I'm a statistician background. I used to work in the National Bureau of Statistics, so data to me is something in my heart. So it's really nice to see this visualization of the challenges, issues around youth employment in Africa and also in Rwanda. Few things I want to maybe take a few more minutes and really to say this great initiative and youth employment and supporting young people is key issue we're working here. One thing actually I want to share is that UNICEF is working with the Ministry of Youth and Culture, RDB, Ministry of ICT, on a platform we call Passport to Earning, Iganze. Somebody may already heard about this. We're going to launch this in early May. That is a platform to help young people learning through a digital platform, the skills transit from school to work, from learning to earning. So the reason I'm highlighting here is I see the connection of the youth skill development and youth employment. So we're trying to help young people prepare themselves to be able to get employed, where to fill the gap of the education challenge. As we see the statistics, we have 1/3 of young people in this country who are not in education, employment, and training. In other words, they're doing nothing, right? So it's very risky and we need to help them to move. The second part I want to highlight is also regarding education level. The presentation did not mention it, but we know the challenge for young people to get employed are their education level. We have very low education level for population. Majority of young people only have primary school education level. That limited their capacity to be able to employ. So strengthening education is another task we need to go to prepare young people to be the future productive labor force. Third one, I would like to also look at the very interesting observation of the data itself regarding gender. It's very clear, like for service industry and male-dominated sector, when women and female in the agriculture sector. I think that is again emphasize the strong of the gender inequality. We know in most of the country, developed country, and female are actually mostly occupy the position in the service sector. Now it's male. Part of the reason is that we don't have much more job opportunities. When job opportunity comes, male start first. So male get the more advantage at the beginning when they don't have other jobs. But when they find other jobs, then they give the space for the female. So this gender norms and gender inequality in employment. So for a policy perspective, we need to look at how we address this issue to give more female opportunities in service and industry areas, which we call STEM. STEM, we're working for female students now. I think in overall, this is a great initiative, and UNICEF very much is supporting and happy to see this move forward. And we also, I want to also to say, with the NSR, National Institute of Statistics Research, we're actually working to look at how to sensitize young people with data. So we actually have a project working on data readiness for school students to help students learning how to read data. We have the computation on visualization of the statistics among university students, which help university students learn how to apply, use data. I think one area of continuous support is to help young people who can develop a career in the data science, as many of our experts here in the team of the WDL, right? I think that is something going to be very interesting. We're also looking at possible dashboard for child development, to show the situation of children development, and together with our counterparts of state office. So really, I see a lot of areas we can do and support young people either to the job opportunities or to increase their skills so that they are ready to get the job opportunities. Thank you so much.
Thank you. One more, and we go to the next session.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm Sylvain Zama from the Labour. So first of all, I would like to appreciate this very good initiative, and especially this part of forecasting, which is very important for policy evidence decision making. One thing that I would like to highlight, if possible, it will be very important to use use age bracket, because this age bracket between 15 and 35 is large heterogeneous. So really it won't help much because it's a very different group with different characteristics, different challenges, obstacles. If we pick up 15 for 35, it won't help much because it's a very heterogeneous groups. We need maybe to break down into age brackets so as we to have almost a homogeneous groups where you can be having a quite relevant. For instance, if you're saying like, for instance, you want maybe because there is a lower level of education, but you can see someone with who are at 18, and then the person who is at 5, quite giving any intervention, it's quite challenging. The other things, like for instance, for the study we did, we realized at least about 30 years old, majority are married. They don't face similar challenges as the one that at 24 years for guaranteeing the bank, all those challenges. So we would really appreciate if the clock is a breakdown within the age bracket. That would be much helpful. Maybe it is there because we did not present it. But if it's the age bracket are really considered and the clock will be presented, then it would be very wonderful tool that for us to use it for various intervention decision and the policy development. Thank you very much. I will appreciate it once again the behalf of the minister that this is very good initiatives that is going to help the government in the other decision.
Let's appreciate him, please. For a moment, I was worried he wants we change the definition of youth and take us far away from closer to youth. But thank you. You want to intervene?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. It's a very good question, and I totally agree with what you just said. And this is the reason why on our blog we were able to incorporate this, so you can actually see insights depending on the different group that you're interested in. I just demonstrated very quickly. If you're interested to look in the age group that you just mentioned, 25 to 35. On our blog, we have that ability to add these filters in bonus section too, where you're able to do these filters so you can see insights specifically for that age group. So that's a very good question, and thank you.
Wonderful. Let's appreciate it. Thanks for that. We have a panel discussion that is following now, and for us to also be able to have more interventions, and if we have any further questions, I'll also be able to open the floor for us to be able to pick those interventions. Allow me now to bring on set the panelists that will be joining me for this discussion on harnessing Rwanda's youth demographic dividend. And of course, we have none other than Reshma Shuraj, the Vice President, Strategic Engagements, World Data Center. You can take the second seat. Let's appreciate her as she comes. Wonderful. Also joining us on set is Atman Ali, Senior Advisor, Global Lead, Digital and Tech Transformation at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. Let's appreciate him, ladies and gentlemen. Also joining us on set is none other than Anita Uraineza, who's actually an entrepreneur and a member of the Private Sector Federation. Let's appreciate Anita as she comes to join us on set. And lastly, or last but not least, we'll definitely also be able to have Fitulinda Amos, who's the head of strategic capacity development at the Rwanda Development Board. Feel free to join us on the seat right now. Let's appreciate him right now. And of course myself, Eugene and Anwe, joining us on the set. Let's appreciate it, please. Thank you. So if we can have the other mic, just go to the other farthest end right there. Thank you very much. And I love the constitution of this panel. It's officially a panel. It's not a manual. Yeah, most of the time we have men only throughout, but this is a very good constitution of the panel. And I want us to very quickly start off this conversation. And I'll start with you, Reshma. A lot of work has been done, and we in the room are actually appreciating all that particular effort. But I want us, first of all, to take some steps back. In some English, would say, take the arm of the clock back and try to understand what really necessitated all this for us to first appreciate why we even need this, Africa Youth Employment Clock. Let's start first of all from there.
Yeah, thanks so much, Eugene, and good morning to everybody. It's wonderful to connect with you, and we're really proud as a team to be able to showcase this amazing work that we've been leading over the last year in partnership with the MasterCard Foundation. I think the journey started because, the MasterCard Foundation obviously also has this vision of trying to get 30 million young Africans into dignified and fulfilling jobs. But to better understand these challenges, you need to understand what is the baseline, and to understand where we are now and where we go, And if you are going to actually be creating programs that benefit youth, it's super important to understand the numbers. And this is what the clock actually does. It brings together in a very consistent way where you're able to actually compare between countries, and understand what the picture is looking like at a grassroots level so that you can help organizations like the MasterCard Foundation with its country programs. You can help governments and policymakers as part of their advocacy and their dialogue. You can help the media when you're writing your stories, So I think this data is meant to empower and to support the dialogue with the aim and the objective to be taking tangible action to address the problem.
Right. We'll come back to be able to understand also how you'd like it to be utilized and what would make you feel fulfilled in the work you've done. I want to go into another question for Atman. This a little bird has whispered in my ear and said you have actually a personal connection to this project, especially having been able to be part of the process at some point before your new duties. Talk to me a bit about what is running in your mind, watching the presentation that you've just seen here, and today being actually the day of the unveiling of this clock. What's running in your mind right now?
Thank you, and I think that the personal connection is from multiple points of view, to be quite honest. I had the privilege of meeting and working with Wolfgang, I think many years ago, 20 years ago. And I was privileged to be included in the first community of practice that worked on the first clocks that World Data Lab worked on, Relation.io and World Property to some extent. But then the other personal connection I have is I was actually with Italian colleagues in the Master Foundation for my current role. So I was the lead for digital economy for Kenya and Rwanda. And I had a connection in this conversation that led to this clock being launched today. And the third, I think, connection that I have is one, because after leaving the Master Foundation, I served as the senior policy and advisor to the Minister of ICT and Innovation in Rwanda. Worked in the education sector with the current director of Mastercard Foundation, David. So we have looked at these problems also from the education sector point of view. And now at TBI, we are working very closely with 41 governments to work on their strategies, policy, delivery, technology partnerships, to actually look at similar problems that the clock is trying to achieve. So I'm actually very happy, very proud, very privileged to be on the panel today. Why I think this is important is as was said, it sets the baseline, but in a very unique way. Typically what we do with data analytics is we look at historical data and then try to make a sense of the future, right? This gives us a lens into the future because you can project, right? So you can be able to now look at historical data, the kind of analytics provided by WDL into the future, try to do policy innovations, try to do A/B testing of policies. We've had some of the problems that this data is already highlighted. Right? There's a shift from agriculture as an employment opportunity for young people in Rwanda into the services sector. Just that simple statement has multiple policy implications. Food security, what happens to that in Rwanda if no one is in agriculture? How do we develop the services and what are these services? Are we investing in the digital economy? Are we investing in the traditional economy? What does it mean for Rwanda's position in East African community, in the region, in the world? Right? So, to end, what I see this clock is not just a nice set of dashboards. It's actually the beginning of very important high-level conversations that together in this room, I think many of us are involved in from different points of view, that enables us then to give the proper advice and the proper opportunities to our young people in where to focus, but more importantly, the proper advice to the private sector and the public sector.
Wonderful. Must be a proud moment for you. Thank you for giving us that background information in that sense. Anita, I want to talk to you a bit, and I'd love you to talk to us, especially from a perspective as an entrepreneur yourself, and also within the private sector space. We've heard of the mismatch or the gap between the population growth that is growing faster than the labor market can actually absorb. But I want to read your thoughts, first of all, on the significance of such a tool that is being launched today. How is it significant for you within the private sector space?
Thank you. As they said, my name is Anita. I'm a female entrepreneur. I have different companies here in Rwanda, but I'm here on behalf of Private Sector Federation. I'm a member of PSF, but not only a member, I'm also a chairperson of a specialized cluster where there is youth, women, and people with disabilities. So I'm going to respond as entrepreneur. Private sector contributes a lot in the creativity, to give employment to youth, to young people. Because, for example, I have a company, and the employees are more than 100 workers, and in those workers, 70% are young people. Yeah, they are young people. Because we need young people to have enough production. I think compared that in the public companies, even if they offer job to elder staff, they can even do their job in front of computers. But for us, we need the people who are able to move, who are able to be more productive. Yeah, those staff are both boys and girls. Yeah, that is why I can say private sector contributes a lot to give opportunities to young people. Thank you.
Wonderful. We need to appreciate 100 people having a job because of the effort that she's doing. We need to appreciate that. Let's just giving opportunities to such numbers of people. Thank you so much for that. I'll come back to you on that. But I want to speak to Amos, especially from the Rwanda Development Board, the Strategic Capacity Development Department. I know even RDB has a whole skills office. I want to understand, how do you plan to tap into such a tool that is being launched today in trying to formulate, the direction of the skilling and the capacity building that you do within RDB, to be able to allow for, even investors as they come to the country, they have people with enough skills. How do you plan to use this tool from RDB?
Thank you so much, Jim. Maybe let me start with this statement. If I had the means to reward work data, I would do it right now. Why? Because they are making work easier for policymakers. When you focus to the future, you let the people know what the future is like. Then all the plans, like you said before, you are going to plan better. So this tool is going to be very useful for us, and it complements what we do. The department has sector analysts. One of them is a future skills analyst. And at times, this person has been struggling to know what the future is like. The tool rightly answers his worries. The other sister department, which is targeted labor market intervention department, has activities and tasks related to youth employment. We always gather data about the need. We are trying to design an internship policy for the needs. We are trying to come up with what the jobs are intended for the needs. We are looking at coming up with the internship per sector. So all these initiatives, looking at this tool and the data that is producing, it answers what our needs are. The reason to work them, although I don't have the means now. That said, on the skills development part, we'll get to know what are the skills needed for employability. And this tool will be very useful for us. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. We'll come back to you one more time. Allow me to bring back Reshma. Reshma, I want to understand from where you sit. We heard from the keynote speaker who actually asked or challenged that we need to think after this, what next? I want to frame that as a question to you. After this tool, and the data that is in there, that is so rich, what next? How can the World Data Center, or what would you do to support in any way? Or is your work just to say, okay, the data is there, do what you want as a country, when you search and find whatever is there, do as you wish? What are the other interventions that could be coming from where you sit?
Yeah, thanks, Eugene. I think there are a few things, one of which is, we working in Africa as World Data Lab are committed to walking the talk. So as you've seen, we are committed to creating jobs ourselves. So by recruiting data scientists, and in partnership with the foundation, we've done a great job to build capacity, and we're hoping to kind of scale that up as well. But I think on the other hand, it's one thing building a tool and putting it out there. It's the other thing on the advocacy and the dissemination and making sure that the dialogue with partners like NSIR, with government stakeholders, with other partners, that advocacy work actually continues as well. So working very closely with the foundation, we want to continue to make sure that that tool is in the hands of many. But in addition to that, I think there's scope to actually go deeper, into the data and really understand, whether a job in construction, a job in services, what is that looking like? How much does that pay? So we can actually get more granular in terms of that detail. We talk about a living wage, and we talk about concepts like working poor. There's an opportunity to kind of dissect that even further. So I think there's so many different directions that we would want to focus on as well. So this is just the start and the beginning of the journey of putting the numbers out and getting more granular and getting more detail.
Right, that stands at the beginning. Atman, how do we ensure that this is not a wasted opportunity? the availability of these two is not always good. How do you do that?
No, I wouldn't call it a wasted opportunity. I think it's the beginning of part of a bigger journey within the foundation and outside the foundation. So I'll give insights into a conversation that I've just sparked from my current role. At the Atomic Day Institute, what we do with 41 countries across the world is to look at opportunities to help political leaders get things done. That's how we see it. So there are certain things that the political leaders want to achieve during their terms in power, and we work with them on strategy, policy, delivery, technology partnerships in ways to help them to do that. When I look at the lens that I have across the 41 countries that I serve, job creation is priority number one across the board. Right? The nuances change and will be different. Right? Some are more focused on traditional industrialization now, some are focused on creating jobs out of value chains like mining that they haven't explored, but increasingly there's a very great focus on digital economy and connections on that. So as I'm speaking right now, I'm actually scoping out an offer that we want to roll out across our 41 countries on digital economy. And this requires data. It requires this talk, if I can put it bluntly. And so the conversation I'm hoping to spark under the auspices of course, the National Foundation and who has sponsored this work is to see if there's a possibility of actually looking at this block as one of the data sources that we can use as the Institute when we're working on strategy, policy, delivery inputs and technology input, because this is tech, to the governments that we serve. And then use it as not only a baseline tool, but a continuous monitoring tool as we do our policy innovation work together. Right. So that's a practical, concrete point that I'm committing here on the stage with. Can all of you on the neck when I step off, but something I'm very keen to explore.
Right, interesting. Anita, let's pass the mic to Anita. Anita, women, we've seen from the presentations earlier that even the skills mismatch is heavily or will heavily affect women. Let's talk a bit about the gender scope and share with us your personal experience or your personal thought process on how we can ensure that there's a lot of inclusivity, especially women within the job space. What would you wish to be done to ensure that we have more women within the employment scope?
In my opinion, I think what we can do is just to encourage women and girls to convince them that they are able to do all workers, to do any job. Yeah, as we saw, even the girls are able to do even construction, even in a factory where I experienced everything. The girls and the women, they are more focused. If you give them the job, they do, they are more productive and same as boys. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Amos, let's pass the microphone to Amos. Good. Just on that note of the inclusivity, particularly from a gender perspective, you mentioned the internship policy, but I want to read your mind on policy shift or formulation around inclusivity when it comes to ensuring that women are not left behind, especially when it comes to the job mismatch and the skills mismatch. What is being done on that front?
Thank you. There are a number of interventions that have been proposed in this effect, but some have been just verbal. But we are way beyond that. And we want to come up with a gender policy in national skills development and employment promotion ecosystem. And maybe a little background about that. We definitely realize that women or the gender female is sort of deprived in many areas. We also realize that not only gender, but also the other inclusive part of it to do with people with disabilities. So, mindful of that, we are developing a policy on gender inclusiveness, and a survey has been done, soon to be published. It will be a gender policy on national skills development and employment promotion. It will soon be produced. It was done 2 months ago. So that in the skills development, we always encourage female participation. When we get opportunities for training, we always highlight it to the partners we disseminate information to, that female participants are encouraged to apply. 2, the professional internship. There is a special incentives for ladies. As we give to the private sector, the ideal is that once we want to offer internship, we give it to first come, first serve. Those who are registered in the internship database, the way they apply is the way they are pressed. But when it comes to a lady or a female, there is that bit of incentive that she can be recommended and then she's taken on by either a government institution or a private institution.
Thank you, Reshma. I want to hear your thoughts on this. I mean, we in the 21st century, we've talked a lot about empowerment. A lot of interventions have happened. The data is now available on that. I just want to read your personal thought. What's the missing link, especially on the aspect of closing this mismatch gap that is going to affect women most? I just want to read your thoughts.
Yeah, I think as the data is suggesting, currently, like in Rwanda, there's a strong focus on women being concentrated in the agricultural sector, but what is the pathway to kind of get them into, high-paying jobs? But, education is key to that, I think it's a question of demand and supply, and also foundational building blocks. Investing, Rwanda's done, the government of Rwanda has done a fantastic job in terms of its enrollment numbers, getting students into the classroom, but it's also keeping them into the classroom, right? And it's quality of education and making sure that girls, are empowered and are equipped to actually get into high-paying jobs as well. So I think the education system is the backbone as well. And yes, there are other structural factors that act as barriers as well for women in the workforce. But I think also the pivot into the digital economy, making sure that girls are moving down the right trajectory in terms of the courses that they select, whether it's science, whether it's STEM courses, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. That's a core area as well. So because what we also see is that women shy away from those types of fields, right, and go into more soft skilled jobs. And we need to change the composition and the dynamics of what happens at a grassroots level going into the system.
Adman, you want to chip in on this?
Yeah. So as David will tell you, education is what we used to call a wicked hard problem. It's a problem that when you solve something, you break 10 other things. Right? And so there'll never be a situation where you fix education the same. I feel that it will always be progressing from one level of maturity to the other. Without education, I think the data told us a story, right? There was one slide that was shown when our data scientist was showing the data, which says that predominantly in Rwanda, the majority of the young people who are employed in that sector are not educated. There was a batch of them. This shift that we've observed from the data, that there are going to be more jobs outside of agriculture, is a threat to that group. And the only way to get that group to take up the opportunities of jobs and services that are going to be there in the future is education. It's as simple as that. Now, it's not simple as the way I've just said it, because when you talk about things like digital economy, let's imagine a persona from that segment of youth. Right? It's a young lady currently sitting in Kayonza, Rwanda, 4th generation farmer. Maybe went to school up to grade 6, dropped out, is very good with working on her hands, and we're talking about the digital economy. What are the opportunities for that person in the digital economy? Digital economy, you can abstract it in many ways. One way is looking at it from the gig economy all the way to creating AI startups like university graduates. So there's a spectrum where the jobs that can be created as an entry point into the digital economy for that persona that we've just discussed needs to be a starting point. And the starting point will again be education, because you have to invest in scaling, reskilling, upskilling, basically, and mindset change, which is actually the most important. So I cannot stress enough the fact that focus on including opportunities to bring these young women we just talked about into the fold of the future of work, the future of jobs, needs to start with key elements of the basic education system adjusting to help more of them be aware of the opportunities. There's a lot of information sharing that has to be done in terms of what the opportunities look like. And there's a lot of focus on not only gender, but the rural and urban divide from that aspect. So again, coming back to the point, it's not as simple as saying, let's educate everyone and it will be done. It's a big problem, and there's a lot of investment from a policy point of view, government enablement point of view, development partner inputs, people like MasterCard supporting targeted interventions around education that basically address job creation for the right segments of the right.
Right. I see you have the microphone. I'd like to ask you the same, especially now that there's a lot of talk and a lot of drive towards digital, space within Rwanda, and we're seeing the demographic of young people, the population is going to actually go up there. I want to know what is being done in ensuring that there's skilling or what opportunities are available for those in the room who actually have a sort of solution to the skills gap within the digital space here in Rwanda. What is the status? How do we look like?
Thank you. Yeah. It's well noted that, of course, the digital world and the communication world, first of all, I think it is by looking at the earning of many professionals, they earn better. And realizing that what the government is doing is encouraging it, but not just encouraging it, but putting in systems and also interventions to make it happen. I will cite two examples, or three. One is the establishing centers of excellence in the line of digital area. You are aware that there is Rwanda Coding Academy. This is an intervention that the government has put in place so that the young people can start early at those lower levels, lower high school and upper high school, to do better, know it better. The other is establishment of high lodge universities like Kigali. I think it's the only campus in Africa in that space. Apart from that, it has not left behind the usual, even the rural population. You probably understand and you're aware of the digital ambassadors. This is all about the initiatives to make sure that the whole population, youth, both trained and maybe not trained, have those skills that make them do better in their work. Thank you.
Wonderful. I want to open the floor if there's any question, and then we'll come back again to the panel right here. Feel free to raise your hand. If you have any questions specifically to any of the panelists, you could be able to mention that, and then you'll be able to shoot your question. Just raise your hand up. I see a hand. Can someone help us, please, with microphones, or I can do it? She raised her hand up fast. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. It's actually not a question, but pretty much following up on the previous presentation. Once again, my name is Donata Gihana. I'm a Gender Strategic Advisor at the Gender Monitoring Office. I just wanted to really appreciate MCF and WDL for such an amazing initiative. And
appreciation to the National Institute of Statistics of Rwanda that has ably and provided timely statistics for us as a country, and as somebody who deals with numbers and research all the time. We definitely rely a lot on the information that's regularly provided by the National Institute of Statistics. But when it comes to gender specifically, they do a lot in terms of providing us with gender thematic reports all the time. I really looked at the platform as the young man took us through that. It's quite exciting. And you know what took my attention and excitement are the trends down there, looking at data in one place, the data trends for the last 10 years, but also, you know, the future in the next 5 years. I want to also build on what Ivan mentioned, that data is our way to really understand the challenges, the numbers, the stats, but also it might be a little bit confusing, especially when we all know that behind those numbers, there are reasons. There's one institution that probably mentioned, you know, these data have faces, or these numbers have faces. So behind these stats, behind these numbers, we know there are reasons behind that. I wanted to put it to Mastercard, David, data interpretation and analysis, because I understand this is really helping us to access data, but also understand data. Are there initiatives beyond the provision of the data? How best do we really help all the stakeholders to understand these numbers in terms of analysis? How do we really simplify it for the other partners? And when it comes to gender data specifically, as somebody from UNICEF mentioned, we know behind the numbers, there lies social norms, socially constructed, you know, challenges behind those numbers. And we all know that actually when we have it right, we have very informed strategies and policies. What are the plans to help us further simplify the data? And also beyond the launch, how best are we going to, you know, help partners know about this platform? And very lastly, to the data scientists, when I looked at the trends up to 2030, that's quite informative. I clicked on the note at the end, 2030 years, historical data informed that prediction. Is there, you know, would you help us really understand what informed the data, those predictions, and how NISR was involved? And even annually, beyond 2024, how are we going to keep updating this platform? Because timely data is really important. Thank you for taking long.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. You want to pick it, or Reshma, you want to take that? Any of the two? Yeah.
I can briefly take it. Thank you for your wonderful intervention. And just, somebody asked me to actually stay up in a minute, and I'll be back to hear all the rest. But I'll try to illustrate your key point, because obviously, never can, we are not fortune tellers, right? You know, when you were, you will be all way richer. However, the two key things I want to say. One is, it's really important to have good base data. We didn't invent the data. What you do, your team, is the basis, and then you combine it with a lot of modeling techniques. Having said that, you can add actually other data. You can add data from space, for example. You can make a lot of creative data. But the key thing is you always have to add it up. And what I like it most, what you said is the one word, make it easier, make it simpler. You know, too many of our friends and competitors make it more complicated. Now you need to make one more simple. That's why Steve Jobs was so successful. Make it simple. It's complicated to do it simple. But to your precise question, give you an example, maybe use Aftermath example, right? You have girls in agriculture who have a certain profile. You can actually predict now what's the chance of this girl to survive the next 10 years. Fortunately, it's a much better projection than in the past. Poor people live longer, rich people live even longer, but poor people live longer, that you can project. You know how many new girls are coming in, so it is, you know how many children are 10 years old today, so you can predict how many will be 17 in 7 years. Some will die, unfortunately, some will not. You know how many are in school, you know the school transition rates. you know, urbanization. You can project actually the construction sector. That was a big, I think, surprise, but a very logical thing. Construction is not just in Rwanda, in Kenya, it will be the driver of jobs. So the plumbers, the technicians in the electricians, they are the future. But there is a gender. So I could go more deeper into the data modeling, but if you combine all of those key lessons that you have on social, demographic, economic, jobs data, you can make informed decisions. The thing is, anybody in your team, somebody in McKinsey, somebody Mastercard, somebody whatever can do it, many can do it, but it is actually a big task, if you're proud of it, and you put it in a platform that you can transparently control for it. If you say, I don't like this district number, I have a different projection, okay, let's talk about it, let's put it in, you get a new number. But the key is, you don't have to write a report for this. You put it in the machine, click on it, like in the Google search, and you get a new number. And that is actually at least one thing. There's one thing which just saves you time. And that's, if you achieve that one, you already did a lot.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah. You want to intervene? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, there was a question that was asked about what the foundation is doing to develop capacity to make sense of the data and what we see on dashboards and similar tools. And the foundation is involved in these fronts, both supporting the availability of data, but also translating and building capacity to make sense of the data. So we have a couple of initiatives that are going on, and we'd like to ask our Chief of Impact and Research to tell us about that.
To put you on the spot. I think one of the things that we have been struggling with is how to simplify impact narratives. One of my colleagues here just set up an impact narrative book in which we look at I talked about all the data we have and the use of those data. So we're working with communications department, we're working with the policy and thought leadership and the group. We've just set up a working group, and my colleague sitting at the back here, Ayo, is actually on that working group that is developing a methodology for simplifying impact narratives around the data and statistics that we have. So that's an ongoing work. And it's internally and externally.
Wonderful. At least there's an answer or answers to that. Any other question? Any other intervention? Just raise your hand and I'll give you the microphone. Right.
Thank you to the panelists. I wanted to pick on an initiative Amos talked about of internship. I think I wanted to commend RDB for this in terms of giving an opportunity to graduates across government and private sector to basically get exposure to work. And I think from our institution, we have seen how that's meaningful in a field which, by and large, people get trained in our institution for a year or two, and after a while, some of them spread in other institutions, private sector and government, which becomes very relevant. And I think that's really commendable. Almost what I had in mind was they need to scale this more. For example, at the moment we have, let's say, the ability to absorb 15 to 20, but I think we could even do more just as an institution, but likewise across, even including the private sector. So they challenge the private sector to give space to these graduates and give them the opportunity to learn on the job. And I think if we target some more numbers towards that, I think that would be so meaningful.
Thank you, Ivan. Especially picking on the issue of internship, I think I would also like you to share with us the model that RDB is using, because I've heard that most of the interns are not being absorbed by private institutions, because private institutions say we don't have the time to waste teaching people. You can't do it, I want someone who can do this job, and that has been very disadvantageous for interns. And what would be the incentives, if any? Because I know private sector people have incentives.
Thank you so much. we realize that it's actually an issue. But we always wonder, is it a chicken egg issue? What should come first? Do the private sector need ready people, or should we produce ready people? When I say we, that's the supply side. Now, realizing that the private sector, of course, they may not see it the way we want it, there is that incentive that is being given. One of them is to make them not go through the process of first come, first served, I said. If they know there is a potential intern, they right away recommend. Amos, a statistician, wants to work with, wants to be placed in company X. There is no need of saying, can you give us a statistician? No. Can you allow us to take on Amos to come and be hosted in our institution? That's an incentive which doesn't require the rest, like government institutions, to wait until Amos is reached on. The other incentive, of course, goes again to the private sector, especially in rural areas. Again, if it is a private sector that is in a rural area, or even actually public sector, we encourage them to do recommendation. The other incentive is, of course, the stipend that we give them. The other is we have with some of our development partners rapid response training, some fund that is given to the private sector so that they train the youth, especially those who have just graduated, and after some period of time, they are taken on in those companies or they may be distributed in other companies. So those are some of the incentives that are given to the private sector.
Thank you, Amos. I have a question here. Let's have a hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Isaac, Project Advisor at the Digital Transformation Center, Rwanda. Speaking about job creation, and particularly in the agriculture sector, and this dashboard, which is the government's effort to show national statistics and demographics on the job market, what could be the next steps, or what is the vision to also integrate cross-national or cross-regional trade, cross-regional job opportunities where we see a lot of youth people being in this sector, in this domain where we see the agriculture sector has a lot of this kind of movement interaction. What are these kinds of insights have you been able to glean from your data sets that can also inform perhaps the African Union Commission on facilitating this? Or how could this dashboard be used to kind of pivot this to help some countries that are looking at perhaps the East African community to help us pivot in that direction to facilitate more job creation regionally? Thank you.
Reshma, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely scope. We've started, obviously we've got national data for all countries, but drilling down at a sub-national level, we started with Kenya and Rwanda, and we'll be also launching in Ghana quite soon, and we've got work underway for Nigeria and Ethiopia. But I think there's an opportunity to kind of also expand further at a continental level and look at other countries beyond the MasterCard segment priority countries in terms of going deeper into that data. I think that whole East Africa story and kind of cross-border trade as part of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is such an important area, and skills should move as well, intercontinental skills, So I think that's a big part, and it will be part of our conversation with the MasterCard Foundation as well as part of the next iteration.
Right, thank you. Any comments? All right, let me keep. Again, then I'll come back.
Thank you very much. I'm Joseph from the French Agency for Development. Just one question. I want to, before that, as others said, this is appreciated. The data, I think, they're very useful. And this is very useful, especially for the decision makers, policy makers. But when you look at the perspective of youth, how can this be useful to youth? And my question was, if you talk about employment or job, you cannot actually talk about it without talking about skills. And when I see the projections, when I see what will happen in 30 or 10 years ahead, my question again comes back on this trend, the industry, the services. What are the trends in terms of skills? Is this something you can look into? That's my question, because we need to see, as a youth, he needs to know or to understand what are the skills. I mean, I don't know, probably you can say it better than me, but what are the trends in terms of skills? I don't know if the question is clear, but that's what I want to ask. All right.
If I was to pass that over to you, how would you respond to that question if it was you being asked?
I would say that, again, projections are based on the current data. So I mean they are projecting in 30 years, in 2030, based on the current data. So if I have, or if I know the trends in terms of skills today, I can probably use the same, approach to project the trends in terms of skills in the 30 years. So I don't know if I can do it, but I hope they can.
All right, let me ask Amos. Amos, how would you respond to that question?
I was also about to ask the same question to WDL, why they have not put that bit of skills, so that if one is to look at the data, also look at the skills trend. So it's something that should be, maybe if they are planning to do it, the better. Right. And now, Joseph rightly said it, we need to know what are the future skills for employability. Save that, then it will be fighting a war that is not very manageable. So, when we are very aware that there are certain skills that the future needs because of the emerging technologies. Look at mechatronics, look at artificial intelligence, and the like. So the future of the skills trends will inform what the employability skills will be. And that's what maybe like the WDO will support us in. I'm very happy our development partners have been supporting in getting this kind of data, the surveys, of course, and can't miss words without mentioning MasterCard. They've been supporting in doing this, but we need to know now and in the future what are the skills needed.
Reshma, is this a component that maybe because of time we're not able to be shown? Is it there? Does it feature anywhere? Will it?
So far, as you saw, we've got education very well with partners. I think this is the conversation, with partners like the foundation in terms of how to kind of integrate. It's certainly possible to kind of integrate a skills layer into the POC. So I think this feedback is really, really appreciated and valuable.
Wonderful. You raised your hand so much. I'm now.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nishkweli. I run the American Chamber of Commerce in Rwanda. And first of all, thank you for the presentation. It was really great to see the data that was presented. A little bit more specific also, some of the companies that we manage or we support, we are a hub that supports American businesses in Rwanda and also Rwanda businesses that are looking to do business with the US. Which means that there's a lot of employee conversations, skill gaps, and the whole conversation has been going on. What I was particularly really interested to see, which was amazing, is how it was zoomed into some of the districts. And having some companies that were trying to advise and say, high local, high specifically into district spaces to actually create jobs at grassroots levels. That was great to see. I guess my question is more, moving forward, and I know this conversation has gone a lot around skill gaps, but moving forward with institutions like the American Chamber, for example, how Do you guys see partnership, or what is the next steps that we could also be involved in gaining this data at times that would support maybe even from an investor perspective in the US before we think of Rwanda or Africa itself, and see what's the job gaps or employment spaces. What can we learn from that as I leave your tour and say maybe this is a great session that I also heard this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Allow me to come back to you and ask you a question. A lot of times, especially on the issue of the growth population versus the the labor market that can absorb these skills. There's that challenge, and all the time I have these kind of conversations, there's always finger pointing. The education system is failing. You're not giving us employable people. But what can the labor market do to fix this problem? You help in one way or another, or create opportunities for employment. What more can be done by the labor market to try and fix this challenge that we have at hand?
I mean, that's a really good question. One of my initiatives in taking the position the past 2 years has been how do we not just bridge the gap, but also look at the labor market to be supportive. As the person that represents the private sector in some way, what can we also advise our businesses to look into when you are looking to employ more folks in your businesses? And I appreciate the conversation around internships. And we've been trying to push that, say, hire more interns, get the skill up, but the reality at times also on the ground is where do some institutions go to find that? And maybe this could be even a conversation challenge for the RTP or how institutions come together. Because right now, as the US Chamber, maybe our first thought would be, let's go to ALU, and that's where we'll source the interns. But reality